HS2. It's a brewing, rumbling scandal, isn't it? It appears to have been derailed, but a procession of northern mayors have been getting involved and saying that actually they think that the government should not scrap HS2, most notably Andy Burnham.
So there's a simple but powerful message coming back from the northern mayors, but also the Mayor of London today, who's with us too, back to Westminster and Whitehall. And it's this: don't pull the plug on the north of England. Stop thinking you can treat people here like second-class citizens when it comes to transport.
Yeah, well, there we go. Look, I've long subscribed to the view that we should be connecting the north of England and the east, etc., to itself better, as opposed to having a direct line that could get people out of there and into London. But Liam Halligan joins us now, who is, of course, our economics and business editor with On the Money. Don't kill off the north, essentially, is what you say.
I think this is an open goal for the likes of Andy Burnham, who, to his credit, has been talking about HS2 for years, and indeed for Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, getting in on the act, and those other Labour mayors, of course. Look, this is a fiasco. This high-speed super train, it was meant to cost £30 billion when it was first conceived in 2010. The current estimate is more like 110 billion. The bit from London to Birmingham is being constructed. Birmingham to Manchester is probably going to be scrapped just as the Tories head up to Manchester for their annual Conservative Party conference, as the party faithful gather. The other part of it, from Birmingham to Leeds through East Midlands Hub, that was scrapped last year. So look, HS2 only ever made sense to the extent that high-speed rail makes sense in a geographically small island, and a lot of people would say it doesn't. But it only really makes sense. You only get bang for your buck, and it's all taxpayers' money, if you do that Birmingham to Manchester and Birmingham to Leeds branch. Why? Because we've already got two railways from London to Birmingham, right? Euston to Birmingham, you know, reasonable time, particularly if there's decent Wi-Fi, you can work on the train, and you can go from Marylebone just to the west of Euston to Snow Hill in Birmingham. I mean, these through the Chiltern lines. We don't need another London to Birmingham train line unless it is part of a high-speed link all the way up to Manchester and also all the way up to Leeds. And that's why these mayors, rightly, are kicking up.
Well, it's a choice that has to be made now. Do we plough ahead at great expense with a project that actually I think even the people who came up with thought probably wasn't necessarily the best idea to begin with? Or do we just call it quits?
Look, there is a huge amount of vested interest here. What do I mean by that? I mean the big engineering conglomerates who want these very, very lucrative, you know, nailed-on public sector contracts. I'm talking about land speculators who have bought a lot of acreage up and down these lines, particularly around the proposed stations. They stand to make huge amounts of money if HS2 goes ahead. But is it really the right thing for the country? A lot of people would say not. There's something called the sunk cost fallacy in economics. Poker players know it well. It's the idea just because you've got a lot of money on a hand, you don't keep following bad money with good money. You learn when to quit. And if we quit this with 20 billion, 20,000 million, 30 billion in the hole, can that work that's been done be repurposed for another, for something else? I'm not sure. What I do know is that if you end up just with London to Birmingham, that would be the worst of all possible outcomes. So if the government is going to go ahead, it simply has to press on to Manchester for this to make any economic sense whatsoever.
I think there's something coming down the track, for a better phrase.
Oh.
Which is people who have sold properties or businesses, commercial property.
They're going to be furious. They're going to be furious.
At a loss.
They're going to take the government to court. I mean, come on. If you've had your house CPO'd, you know, and the compensation scheme, I follow quite a few of those cases when making documentaries in a previous life. If your house has been CPO'd, compulsory purchase ordered, by HS2, i.e. by the government, and then the thing doesn't even happen, and your life has been upended, then you may have some legal redress. You will have had to have signed a settlement agreement, but still, these cases may be reopened. But more than that, Patrick, there's something else going on here. There's a sense of loss, because if you talk to genuine rail industry insiders who aren't being paid by HS2, and there are still some of them in the industry, they will say to you, for the 10, 20, 30 billion pound we've already spent, what could we have done on the railways? You know, You grew up in Manchester, right?
Yeah,
the Castlefield corridor in Manchester is a disgrace. It's near Deansgate Station. You know exactly the bridge I mean.
Yeah.
The whole of the network goes into one line in either direction, right? It absolutely disrupts trains across the whole of the northwest of England, going up to Scotland. So many times the Department of Transport has promised money to widen that Castlefield corridor. There's another place near Milton Keynes called Ledburn Junction, another famous bottleneck. You can electrify trains in the north, 80% of which aren't electrified, outrageously.
Well, Cumbria as well is another one. You know.
So they're diesel, they're slow, they can't pull many carriages.
Yeah.
It means they're infrequent, they can't accelerate away. They're overcrowded. Ask anyone commuting into Manchester, Liverpool, Sheffield or Leeds from those northern towns that surround those great cities.
Yeah.
Always crowded, often can't get on the train. What could you have done with 20 or 30 billion quid? That is the real question at issue here.
It is. Liam, thank you very, very much. Liam Halligan, our economics and business editor.